Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, November 16, 2023. My name is Alexis Briggs Brignoni, and I'm accompanied, as always, lucky to have my co-host, the proficiency checker of tool performance, the one that checks that, is this even wrong? The Heather of the digital forensics world, the, with caps, the one and only Heather Charpentier. The music is Higher Up by Shane Ivers and can be found at silvermansound.com. Heather, so happy to be here. Let me show people our faces. There we go.
Oh, thank you for the great introduction.
It's all true, and you know it. You're humble like that, but it's true. Oh, I lowered the volume a little bit abruptly, but it's all good. Hello, everybody that's live. We appreciate you being here, and hello to the good folks that are listening a little bit later to the podcast or watching the stream a little bit later. So thank you for being here. So as always, Heather, you gotta tell me what you've been up to in the last 2 weeks or 14 days that we haven't talked. What's going on? What happened?
It has been busy. I've been really busy with work. I have been creating my own timeline for a case I've been working on because I can't find a tool that I like the timeline report in. I know we've talked about that. So I have been creating my own timeline by hand. And my plan is hopefully I might know somebody who will help me automate that after I'm done creating it all by hand.
That's awesome. Can you refer me to that person? I have some stuff that I want that person to do too.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find him and maybe I can introduce you to him.
It's a guy. Okay, I would appreciate that. I got some things I need to run by this person.
Yeah.
Look, it's kind of sad, right? Because all the tools say they do a timeline, but then they never do the type of timeline that we need them to do. We ended up doing
I can create exactly what I want. It just takes a really, really long time to do it by hand.
Yeah. No, and that's something that we talked about a little bit about last week, right? About how reporting looks. And we'll continue to talk about that till you all vendors get your game straight. Come on.
But I also did start learning Python. So hopefully I'll be able to accompany this person in automating my timeline.
Well, look at that.
Not quite there yet.
Tell that person to maybe do some artifacts for the leaps. I don't know.
Right.
Oh yeah, we'll get it done at some point. Don't worry. Well, at least me, the last couple of weeks, I've been doing things not as hard or involved as you. So I'm gonna share with folks so they could see what I've been doing, what I've been up to lately. So the first thing I'm gonna show you is a nice picture here of a beautiful skyline and a city skyline as well, like the sky and the city, right? And I was this week, sorry, in beautiful Bogota, Colombia. Beautiful city in South America, and I was there to do some work. And you can see there, it's quite expansive. 8 million people live there in a city that's way, way, way higher than Denver in the Andes. So I was a little bit short of breath because I'm a creature of the sea, born in an island and living in Florida, the flattest place on earth. So a little bit of a hard time getting used to the atmosphere there, but it was a great experience. Actually, let me show a little bit of another picture of what I was doing. So I was there, and I had the honor and the pleasure to give a few conferences and some talks on different digital forensics topics and law enforcement issues to the Colombian National Police. And you can see me there addressing a group of investigators and detectives and different specialized units. So it was super awesome. And obviously the food is great. So you find yourself there, get some pan de bono and get some good food. You're not going to regret it.
Very nice. What was the topic?
So we're doing some work on extortion type of cases, and then a little bit on mobile forensics and some of that parsing of data. So
very nice.
The usual stuff.
Very nice. You also did a little presentation And
Oh yeah,
for
that's
some
nice.
students in New York, excuse me, I was speaking with Alexis, and he's telling me about this presentation he's going to be doing at the University at Albany. And I'm thinking, University at Albany, that sounds familiar to me. I used to teach there. And I'm like, at U Albany in New York? And he's like, yes. And he was doing a presentation for the students. And actually, the student who invited him to do the presentation used to be a student of mine in the mobile forensics class. So found out, and I hijacked the meeting and joined the conversation. So
It was great to have you, Heather, as always. So and the students had such great questions, right? In regards to how do you get into the field, the career progression, questions about we were discussing pretty much how the life or a day in the life of a forensic examiner. So that was pretty interesting. So
yeah, they seem to really love it. It was a great presentation.
oh, you're too kind. Checks in the mail. Yeah. So no. So I had a great time. Thanks for reminding me of that. It
Yeah.
was it was it was really good. I love talking to young people and see that interest and that drive that they have, which just tells me that just because I'm older doesn't mean I need to lose it. So it's pretty always energizes me. Which talking about getting older and making sure you're energized as you get older. Another reason that I know I'm getting older is because now the Unix epoch timestamp has changed. So usually it starts with 1.6, and we look for that 1.6 long number, milliseconds or whatever it is, right? There it is. And Alex Caithness reminded us again, a good friend of the show, when we talk about some of his tooling last episode, and he made a great post. When you see that 17 whatever. I mean, that's a lot of milliseconds there. You know that it's a recent date, so you'll be on the lookout for that. We changed the timestamp. So really geeky folks had some cake to celebrate the change of the epoch timestamp there, and that's where we at.
I sent this around as an email in my office, and I may have gotten called a nerd a couple of times. So I guess it's an honor.
I mean, like, thank you, and they're like, you're not supposed to say thank you. Actually, I did, and I will every single time you call me one. So times are changing. Time moves forward, doesn't stop, and there's always good stuff to do. So and the good things going on in the community. So what's going on in the community lately?
So, a couple of reminders. We talked on a previous podcast about the a few scholarships that were available. Um, IASIS has a couple of scholarships, and the deadlines are coming up. So, I just wanted to give a quick reminder.
Hmm.
Oop, just wanted to give a quick reminder. So, the Will Dockin Scholarship, which is one of the IASIS scholarships, it is for an individual employed by a city, county, or state law enforcement agency to conduct digital forensics examinations. They can't have more than 2 personnel assigned to conduct digital forensic examinations. That application is going to be accepted through November 30th. So that deadline is coming up pretty fast. If you want to get your application in, please do so. And IASIS actually has another one, the Women in Law Enforcement Scholarship. That one is open to either sworn or civilian women in law enforcement, and it involves a written essay on career goals and how the applicant will benefit from the BCFE computer training from IASIS. And that one is also accepting applications through November 30th. So get your applications in.
Hmm.
And then the magnet scholarship is open until December 1st. And that one is going to involve an all access training pass, a 1-year license to Magnet Axiom. And there's 2 categories awarded for that: new to digital forensics and an advanced category. So, again, get your applications in for those scholarships. All 3 great opportunities for people in the digital forensics field.
And that's one of the most common questions. I had it yesterday with the students from the university, and I have it from folks all around. It's like, how do I get in? What type of training and stuff? And this training is expensive, so that's why we
Yeah.
appreciate organizations like IASIS and Magnet to give out those scholarships. One of the things I tell folks is, make sure that you can get your foot in the door, having some of the things that you need to have. But certification wise, some of them, the only real way of getting them is either because your workplace sponsors you and they pay it for you, or if there's a work study program. And I tell people, look into work study programs. If you're not lucky enough to get a scholarship, you can facilitate a class, and Stance does that all the time. You facilitate a class, and then you get a really discounted rate on the certification class, and even possibly the certification attempt or test. So yeah, look into that. I'm really happy seeing folks in the chat. So hi everybody, good to have you here.
I see a few of my coworkers in there calling me a nerd. Thanks, guys.
They do it here. They can't do it at work, so they take advantage of the
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get a little bit technical. So we're gonna get our scholarships, and let's talk about a little bit of great article that Celebrite came out. And I love cheat sheets. They're the
Oh yeah,
greatest. I
me
mean,
too.
yeah, you can't substitute knowledge for a cheat sheet, because then you'll be missing stuff. But it's a good reminder, or kind of direct our attention of stuff that we need to be aware. So what's the cheat sheet about, Heather?
So this cheat sheet has a comparison for the different types of extraction. Celebrate put this cheat sheet out. It starts off with the different states that a device may be in. I'm just going to remove this banner. Hold on one second. So the different states that you may find your device in, whether it be in a cold state or a hot state, so BFU or AFU, and talks about encryption types. But the part I like the best about this cheat sheet is it gives you a comparison of what types of data you'll find in the different types of extractions. So logical, advanced logical, full file system, and it tells you what type of extraction you're going to find calls in, what type of extraction you might find location data in, and some of the more common types of artifacts. I actually, Alexis and I both were kind of doing this before the cheat sheet came out. And we were doing presentations, both for work purposes, and we started this. I would have liked this before I started doing the presentation that I was creating for work. But this is an excellent cheat sheet for anybody in the field to have. It will come in really handy when you're trying to explain to somebody who may not understand the difference between the extractions. If you're explaining it from, in my case, for court purposes, to maybe like a district attorney, the differences of what the different type of extractions may get you and why you want to go for that full file system extraction.
Oh, that's so important. And I had, some stakeholders in the past and telling me, well, where's this thing? And I'm like, well, it's not here. Well, the other examiner from somewhere else did have it. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that person had it because they were having a full file system. But the one that we have right here, it's BFU. So it's way more limited than a full file system. What's a BFU, right? So this is a good resource to make sure that you can communicate people clearly. Like you're saying, Celebrite should have come up with this before we needed it. So they need to read our minds.
Right.
Yeah. So why
a little bit sooner next time?
Yeah, I know Paul's in the chat. Why aren't you reading my mind, man? Come on, get on it. No, it's super useful. Go ahead.
There's certain agencies that only have access to regular UFED, right? So not UFED premium. So they may only be able to get an advanced logical. And this sheet, it would definitely come in handy for them to be able to explain why they don't have certain artifacts and why they don't have access to certain artifacts.
Exactly. And like Troy is saying, even again, we're in the Heather and myself, we're in the prosecutions side of the business. But folks on the work of defense cases, right? When I provide some discovery, now my counterpart on the other side of the aisle there can go to the external and say, look, this is what we got. This is how this is what this means. So it's a good tool overall for everybody to have this kind of cheat sheets going on.
There's also an episode of I Beg to Differ that goes along with this cheat sheet. I'm going to throw it up here. It's episode 23, and it talks a little bit about this sheet and goes into more detail as well. Data extractions explained. So if anybody wants to catch that webinar, this link will be up on our site when we're done with the podcast.
And be aware of something, right? This is obviously it's a great cheat sheet from Celebrite, but other vendors might have additional extraction types that are not in this list for obvious reasons because they're a different vendor, right? And vendors might have the same type of things and change their names a little bit. So uh, a good, friendly competition, right, between Cellebrite and Magnet Forensics folks. Magnet, after they merged with Great Key, right? Now it's all one company, and they have their own capability of doing extractions, right? There is one that's called Logical Plus, and I think we're both really familiar with it. Excuse me. And that's something that you also need to be aware about, right? It's like their version of advanced logical. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. And make those comparisons. You can take your test phone, make different extractions at different levels, and have the understanding. The cheat sheet is a good thing, of course, to make some explanations, but the real knowledge will come from you to making those comparisons. And Heather's been kind enough to give me some test data that she does with her test devices. And I did a presentation from a group from my agency where I compare what's the difference between this extraction and this extraction and this extraction, right? And that's super important. So look into logic. If you have like a Celebrite tooling and you have a Logical Plus, look into that as well and see what are those differences. Maybe in the future we can talk a little bit about some of the key differences there. I don't know,
Yeah.
just brainstorming.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it says here, Ian and Josh did a follow up to episode 25 with decoding. So there's another episode there for everybody to check out that will talk about decoding.
Yeah, there's a question: is a cheat sheet openly available for download? And the answer
Yes,
is yes.
that link will also be up. I have it here. And that link will also be up. It's also on Heather Mahalik's LinkedIn page if you're connected with Heather Mahalik on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so the folks that are listening, we're gonna put, obviously, as always, all those links are gonna be in the show notes, so you can just copy paste them and get whatever you need. So pretty good stuff. We need more of these. So keep. Oh, now that I just remembered. Also, if you're like a Celebrite product user, they have a whole bunch of more cheat sheets in the portal. There's one of my favorites is the one about locations, and they actually go and analyze. Okay, there's this location data source, and what's the level of accuracy? And that's something that we need to be aware of as examiners. Data sets will give you some data, and that's fine, but that data has degrees of certainty, and we have to be careful with that. Some, for example, geolocation artifacts might record your position second by second. Another one might not. Another one might aggregate your location from multiple points, and there's a level of how not accurate, but how precise those readings are in regards to where they happen. So they have a good cheat sheet that explains that. There are some geolocation artifacts that just suck. You don't rely on them, period. You cannot rely on them.
Yeah.
You can use them as okay, so it's recording these things. That's good to know to kind of orient your analysis, but you cannot use them as an evidence point because they're not accurate or not trustworthy in regards to when they were recorded or whatever it is. So the cheat sheet has some of that. And maybe you should do, again, another comments on that in the future.
Yeah, and well, just to add to that too, if you're going to go get that location cheat sheet, follow it up with a visit to Ian Whiffin's blog, Double Black, because he has all of the test data that goes along with that cheat sheet and how he came to those conclusions right on his blog, and it's excellent test data.
Absolutely, and I appreciate Celebrite's efforts into providing these resources, and because it also tells a little bit about what the tool does. So it provides a level of transparency. It says, look, we find locations or we're doing these extractions. This is what this means. This is what the tool's doing behind the scenes. And it provides some level of transparency. And I have a lot to say about that because I appreciate that. And again, that's a good thing that Celebrite does and other tools do. But stepping back and looking at the whole field of tool makers, which obviously we depend on, transparency is a thing that I think we should ask for more, right? And lately, Heather and myself, we had this discussion about doing some tooling testing, verification of the tooling. And it's interesting because we are so used to just blindly taking whatever the tool says and pushing it forward, right? And sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah.
and people, and we say it and people hear it and they don't really, oh yeah, sure, whatever, I need to verify that, sure. and we don't, and that's why the sign, big sign here next to me says verify. And I want to make a quick point on why is that important. Usually, right, if something happens to the tool that breaks the tool, we're gonna hear about it, right? If something that might involve a vulnerability that it might change or affect the how accurate the tool is, we'll hear about it. But little things that might not affect that, usually we don't hear about it. For example, let's say you have a report and your report is providing data, and the data is not inaccurate, it's accurate, but you were expecting, let's say, 20 items of that data and you got five, and you're like, why am I seeing five when I selected 20, right? Again, this is a made up example, right? Or there's this process and the process is correctly shown on your tooling, but when you're going to go out and output that to provide it in a report, then the report is missing something or having duplicates of the thing. And I'm like, I don't see any duplicates here. Why do I have duplicates over here? And again, it's not affecting the accuracy. Like the data's not wrong, it's true, but it's not behaving appropriately. It might be a bug in it. So the question is this something that the tool makers should be making us aware of? Are we in favor of transparency at that level? Why yes or why no? So Heather, what do you think? Is this something that vendors should be letting us know when stuff like this happens, or what's your thoughts on transparency?
So I want to know when there's a major issue in the software, whether it's a parsing issue or a reporting issue or something else altogether, especially if the fix isn't coming immediately. I might choose another tool to use if I know there's an issue. But honestly, you should be using more than one tool anyway. You should never be using one tool for analysis. But if I know already that there's a known issue in a tool, I may choose a different route for analysis completely. So when I'm deciding which tools I'm going to use for analysis, if there's known bugs and I know something is going to take me extra time because there's already issues, I might choose a different route. So the time it's going to set me back, right? I guess, so if I'm working on a case and I find a bug and I'm trying to troubleshoot it and it's taking me that time to figure it out, I need to figure out, is it me? And of course, I always think it's me first. Is it user error? And then I need to figure out, what did I screw up? And then I figure out it isn't me. I didn't screw anything up. And then it takes extra time to go back and forth with support to figure out that it's a known bug. And now I have to wait. So all of that extra time that it has taken me to go through all of these steps, if it was a known bug, I just wish I could have gone somewhere to find out this was a known bug and I should have not used the tool for what I was planning on using it for. I guess if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does. And you're saying this, and it reminds me of the Taylor Swift song, right? It's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Right. So initially, I think, what did I do wrong every time, right? But if there's somewhere to go and just see, okay, so there's these known issues with this tool right now, I'm not going to use it for that, right? So I can use a different tool for that function.
Well, yeah, and like you're saying, right? First, you figure out, is it me, right? If I don't think it's me, how do I know? Is it the data set? Is it the actual tooling? I mean, that is really a time-consuming process.
Yes.
So you're in favor of transparency. You have a list of things for that, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
why would anybody say no to that? Well, I'm gonna put my devil's advocate hat in a second, but all right. So there's time involved in that, right? If there's even verification, the verification if it's a bug, because even if you think it is, the vendor is the only one that can confirm that to you. And again, that you go, which another point. And actually, let me make 2 points here based on what you're saying. The first one I want to read from one of the chat. In the chat, it says, Abraham says, report issues early because they have huge impact in your case and your reputation as an expert witness. And that's true, right? And you don't want to figure out that there's something wrong with that output when you're sitting on the stand or whatever it is. And sometimes the output is the output. Like, let's say you run the tooling and you have to, as part of discovery, you have to provide that output. You want to make sure that your stakeholder knows, hey, this output, it looks the way it looks because there's a known issue. But then that's fine, right? We can work around it. So Abraham makes a good point on making that known. Um, Transparency, is it good? Is it bad? You have any other points of in favor of transparency before I put my devil's advocate hat?
So, I mean, so the saying always is trust the tool but validate, right?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. Why I guess why would you start off trusting? I take the quote from Alex from CCL Solutions. He recently said this to me because he has a poster in his office that reads, "The default position is to distrust the tool. If you're doing that, it gives you as the examiner the power to validate and prove that the tool is working." So I want to start with distrusting, and then I want to personally prove that the tool is working. I love that quote from him. Um, so I guess Adam's comment right there, validate, validate, validate is the answer. But when it comes to the transparency, I just think life would be easier if I went in knowing what the known bugs were.
Yeah, and I'll be straight with you, buddy. I'm always more. I feel myself being more in the camp of transparency than not. I do like to also try to see the other side, right? And I say, well, if I'm a vendor, right, what would transparency at that level where I'm saying, look, I spend as a vendor, again, my vendor hat, I spend $20 million a year giving promotions, right, and advertisement of how awesome my tool is, and then I'm gonna undo it with a list of known issues that I
Yeah.
haven't had time to fix or whatever it is, right? Do I want to do that, right? I guess the answer is no, and it's a tough proposition because let's be real here, and then this is my devil's advocate hat here and trying to understand companies are here to make money. That's what they do. It's a business, right? And
Right.
they have to not only provide us a service, they have to compare themselves with other vendor providers in the field because they're competing against each other. They're competing for users. That's just what it is. That's reality of it. So let's say if I'm a vendor and let's say, well, there's a requirement across the field. Everybody needs to disclose known issues the moment we get them. Then that's a fair field. Everybody has to disclose them. They're mandated to do so. But if they are not, why would they do that, right? It might give the appearance of them being at a disadvantage with a competitor. I guess, and again, do I agree with that logic? No, I want you to tell me. so, so a possible solution is, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on the release notes, right? And we put in the release notes, and there's the knowledge there that nobody will read. Do you read release notes, Heather?
Yeah.
Do you read them?
Once in a while, not very often,
I,
honestly.
I appreciate your honesty.
Not very often.
Well,
If I put in a bunch of support tickets and I'm looking to see if they've been rectified, I'll read the release notes, I guess.
did you fix this issue that I have? If not, I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
No, I mean most people don't read the release notes, and this is the thing with the release notes. Right now, I'm getting my devil's advocate hat off and putting my advocate hat on. Release notes, other than people don't read them, sometimes they're really opaque. Right? There's an issue, and they only let you know that they solved it. They don't let you know what the actual issue was at any level of detail, and that's important. It's important for you to read your release notes. One of the things that I think folks should do in their labs, or even if you have a lab that's multiple examiners, then have a person assigned to read the release notes and then make everybody else aware of what they should be aware of, if there's something important there, because most people don't read it, and that's it. So have a person that does that. I mean, some of the like the ISO 17025, right, for performance verification, testing and calibration, you need to be aware of that. So that's one way of making sure that you're compliant with your accreditations. Read those release notes. But again, I have the little bit of an issue with release notes not being as transparent as I would like them to be either.
Right.
Let me put my devil's advocate hat again. um, so they're in the business. They're competing, right? And another issue is, let's say, for example, they have a running list that's public of issues that they have, right? Could one of those issues be misused by a bad actor to harm the tooling or introduce, really big issues on the tooling? I mean, I understand that, right? Let's say the tooling is vulnerable to a particular exploit in a library that they have. well, you might not want to make that public until it's fixed, or at least tell people, hey, look, make sure that you mitigate some issues this way, but you don't pull it out that way. Again, it's a big debate. Some folks do believe that that should be uh, you know said immediately, and you know it's a debate on that part. So Kate Kane, a great examiner that I had the pleasure of knowing pretty well, she says, I love the quote that if you do it first, you do it worst, and history will thank you for it. Vendors and consumers need to realize that a bug isn't a weakness, and that's such a great transparency pro point that she's saying. And yeah, no, it's absolutely true. It's a beginning, an introduction. It's saying, hey, I recognize this artifact and the need to parse it, and we're working on it, where we're only this far, and that's so true. And again, it's kind of tough for me to from for example, from my perspective, because I'm not a vendor, right? There might be a whole bunch of other issues that I don't know about in regards to the legal issues, how you disclose things at a what level. I understand. I'm gonna get now in my little soapbox. I I understand that certain things you might not want to disclose, but from my perspective, only if you're gonna fix them really quick. Okay. If you have a bug and you have don't disclose it yet because you're gonna get a fix out, then that's fine. Disclose it to me and give me the fix all at once, right? But if you're going to then have a bug in your tooling and then leave it sitting there for 6 months to a year, and then when I tell you about it, tell me, oh yeah, it's known, and I'm like, okay, are you doing anything about it? Because if you can't, because it's not critical, you have something in your queue that's more important. I believe that it should be disclosed so people can either mitigate that bug or, like Heather was saying, find alternate ways to get the output in the way that would require it.
If they were fixed a little more quickly, I can agree with that.
And
Sometimes it takes a really long time on
yeah,
some of the issues, and I think that's part of my thoughts on why I want to know about them is sometimes it's a really long time.
yeah. I mean, we understand we're all stretched thin, and development cycles, they have a process, right? It's not simply like, oh, just fix it and then it's done tomorrow. I mean, I
Right.
understand it's not the case. I do open source tooling,
Yep.
and I wish I had 10 more people, like Johan, which we'll talk about him in a second, and like James and like Kevin Pagano, some other folks, but we don't. And so I try to put empathize with where the vendors coming from, but I think they have to make, or like Kate's saying, be upfront about it. It's not a weakness. Make people, empower people by letting them know what's going on, or just make sure that you have the cycles to be able to fix those quickly, and then let us know as it's resolved. So I guess my devil advocates hat was not really well put in my head.
I mean, ultimately, though, at the end of the day, it's on the examiner, right? So, I mean,
So true. So true.
if there's an issue in the tooling and you find it and you figure out it's not the user error, which is what I usually think, you have to figure out what to do about that in your own case and figure a way around it and how to report the data in an efficient way for your case.
Oh my goodness, you hit the nail on the head. I'm gonna just echo what you said. At the end of the day, it is about you as an examiner. It's not the tooling. Josh, a good friend that happens to work for Cellebrite, but he's a good friend of mine from before. He we were talking about this some time ago, and he told me that how you do your exams is just as important as the artifacts, the tools you use, and all the technical stuff. Right? The process, what you do, is as important as all those other things, and that's absolutely true. You need to make sure that the exam is done by you, not by the tool by itself, by you. And I hate it when people tell me, and I know you agree with me, Heather. Well, I don't have time for that. I don't know who's gonna start looking at those. Well, you are the one. You should.
Yes. Yes.
You're
Or
gonna
you're in
be
a
in a lot of
training
trouble.
class and somebody says, "When am I ever going to use this?"
Oh my
You're
goodness.
going to use it.
Yeah, no, let me put a few comments that came in. Like Troy's saying, an example is Microsoft, right? They sit on issues, and it's not only and Troy's making a great point. It's not only the digital forensics software field, right? Vendors, it's about across all software industry. As you know, software as a product, that happens all the time, and software is becoming even every day more mission critical. So absolutely. And Brett, again, I'm so happy to have Brett around. Known and expected behavior of a tool is much better and easier to explain than a non-disclosed bug. Absolutely. And because it depends on you, right? You as the examiner need to say, look, we run some tooling and this is what it says. And but what actually is this. The tool doesn't validate me. I validate that tool. So you gotta make sure that, and again, it's a challenge. It requires you as an examiner to up your level. And look, I understand that you can go and do this type of verification of the data on every single thing on your case. I understand that. If not, you'll be working a case for the rest of your career, only one case. But if you have one, two, or three main points, do that. And for the rest, do a sanity check. Okay. And if you find a bug in the system and that item is not mission critical, then there's no point of having it, or not critical to your report. There's no point in having that data set there. Then they take it out and do a really streamlined report that addresses the questions that you're able to validate, whose key items are verified as correct. What do you think, Heather? Am I on the right track
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, definitely. And one other comment too: report the bugs when you find them. I
Oh,
don't know how many
yes.
times I've reported a bug, and a company will say to me, "Nobody else is reporting this," and I'll be like, how can nobody else be reporting this?" So if you find them, report them. Don't just move on. I You have to report them.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing
No,
will get fixed.
and I think the issue is that people, it's not that people are not finding them, they find it, but some of the reporting
Yeah,
process is a little bit convoluted. You have to go to
yeah,
this website, and
hmm,
then you have to log in, and then you have to click on I want to do a report, and then say what type of level it is. I don't know, it's just a
right,
bug. Right? And then you have
right,
to then type the thing, you have screenshots, and then there's this process, and people, so maybe it's something that, how does as software developers, me included, how do we capture that data to make it easier for the users to do it, right? um, and this field is hard, right? You cannot really automate any of that because our tooling runs on standalone networks that are not connected to the internet. That's a
right.
standard procedure, right? So it's not like the vendors can simply just do what's that called, metrics.
Like a remote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a remote metric collection. There's a telemetry. That's the word I'm looking for.
right.
It's not like I use telemetry to figure out what's happening. So it's on you and the examiner to make sure the vendors know, so they can, if they can solve those issues. Since you brought the topic, I'm gonna say something else. It's also on you, examiner, if you find the tool is not doing something that you want it to do, to also tell the vendors. Because again, I talk to some
Yeah.
vendors and say, look, this would be it's a thing that people need. You should support it, put it ahead of the queue. And they're like, nobody's asking for it. Like, okay, well, but you still need to do it, right? Maybe they don't know they need it. But
Yes, if you want something, definitely report that you want it.
yep, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
There's a question.
Mm.
Is it common in this field to use one tool to test and another tool to confirm the results, or is it more of you use one tool and get a result, then validate those results through another process?
Oh, what a great question here. Go ahead, Heather.
So, I mean, I use at least two tools on every single case. And I'm using them for both, I would say. So I'm using them to confirm results in each other, but I'm also using them because each tool is has different capabilities, right? So they have different capabilities to parse different artifacts. So I would say both. How
I,
about for you?
well, I mean, I agree with you both, but the reason I would say both is because when it says validates those results through another process, well, guess what? The other tool is another process, right?
Mhm.
Because the other tool is made by different developers using a different methodology or way of doing things. So it is validating with two different processes, aka the two different tools. Um, Now there's a lot to unpack there on that, right? Um, you still need to, it depending, if it's your key evidence, you have to put eyes on it. Like, and when I
Oh,
say eyes,
absolutely.
is there's some manual work, right? If this is a smoking gun, bites, the smoking gun bites, I want to see those bites with my hex editor or hex viewer. Does that make sense? Like, I want to make sure that this is done. Let's say, well, this sec.b file has this particular entry for a conversation that was deleted, right? That's in iOS. I will get that sec.b file out for that particular chat and look at it myself and trace back how that came in to make sure that this is being accurately portrayed. That's why in tooling, and we discussed this before, it's important for tool makers to give me traceability. I want to make sure that what you're showing me on your tooling on your report, I can find it where it is, right? Well, it's on this path, in this location, if it's a SQLite database, on this table, on these columns, right? To make my job easier to be able to backtrack it. And tools, for the most part, are somewhat good at it. And I say somewhat good at it because they may have a report, records and fields for a database, but they don't give you the query, right? They don't tell you how they actually made that query on the database. So they give you the tables and the fields and the records, but how was that built? So again, there's going to be some elbow grease that you have to apply to that to make sure you verify that data. And that's your process, yourself, and then run other tools. That's I think, the easiest, or the way most people will do it. That's a great question.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, at the end of the day, look, at the end of the day, you could do a full exam. It'll take you a long time, but you can do it all by hand, like just by looking at the files and in doing the analysis by hand. I don't recommend it, but you could, in theory, right? But do that for
No,
the because
definitely use the tools.
yeah, absolutely. Which, talking about tools, as always, we're gonna discuss some tooling that capabilities that came out recently.
Yes. So we recently had the chance to try out Paraben and Paraben's capabilities to run ALEAP and iLeap. So I'm going to just share a few slides. I'm not going to run the tool live because it just takes a little bit of time, and we just don't have the time to actually run it live. So let me just show you a few slides of the process to bring a full file system in and process ALEAP and iLeap through Paraben. So I'm going to just full screen this here. So this is what the interface looks like in Paraben 3.7, which is a new release. And to bring the extraction in for the ALEAP and iLeap functionality, you choose the import data and name your case. I just named it test. And you have the options here to choose what you want to do with the extraction that you're going to bring in, the extracted data. I chose the iOS analyzer for iLeap data, but there's other options you can choose: the ADB backup, the Android analyzer for the ALEAP data, Celebrate UFED data, Gray Key data, and others. And then you have the option to bring in your archive file. So I brought in, of course, Josh Hickman's iOS extraction. I brought in his iOS 15 extraction.
Which is publicly available, and we'll put in the notes for everybody. If you don't have it yet, you should.
So yes. From there. His test data is publicly available. Anybody can download it. And then set the tool off and process the extraction with the iLeap option. So it processes and then finish. And I will actually share here. Let me remove. I will share the interface.
Yeah, and it's a pretty, for the folks that are listening, a pretty straightforward process. You do those selections, and then the type of reporting that you would like, or how you would like it to look or to see, and then you can pull that in, which is what Heather is now bringing up on screen.
So this is the actual tool with the extraction all processed. And let me just zoom in here. And you can see here that it parsed the iOS extraction for the iLeap data. So this is the data that you would see if you parse this extraction in iLeap, but it's in the Paraben tool. And the cool thing about running it in Paraben is you can actually go to the different artifacts and you can choose. You can choose what you want to put in your report. So I can come over here and I don't have to choose everything. So iLeap, it runs the report and you have all of the artifacts in your report automatically. With Paraben, you can come over and you can choose just a couple if you want to.
And that's so useful. Again, talking about tool makers being transparent. Well, I'll be transparent with everybody. The leaves by themselves, you don't have the ability of select, unique things, like make a report only of selected items. That capability does not exist in my tooling yet. But Paraben provides you a way of doing that, of saying, okay, I'm gonna parse it with the leap through Paraben, And then from that leap generated data, I want to pick, like Heather's doing, this item, this item, this item, this item, and then select a selection of those to then report on. Correct?
Correct. So I'm going to just back out of here. And then you have the function to create a report. Let me just stop sharing here. And I have a report I will share.
And it has multiple report types, HTML and I think PDF as well, right? And some others.
It does. I have a little slide of that. So here's the different options for the reports.
Yeah,
And I
let's
actually
let's
oops,
read
go
a
ahead.
few here for the folks that are listening. It has a mobile evidence timeline report, a PDF report, Excel, HTML, simple text, simple RTF, CSV. Of course, you have to try them to figure out which one might be best suited for your use case.
So I've ran an HTML report, and I'm just going to share that real quick.
Yeah, so reporting is so important. Been harping about it for a couple of weeks.
I'm going to try and share it here.
Yeah, we were talking about a few weeks ago how vendors really dropped the ball on
There we go.
reporting lately. There we go.
And this is what the Paraben HTML report looks like.
All right, so those are all Leap artifacts, correct?
These are all Leap artifacts. Yeah, I just went through and chose a few from a few different categories. The address book, there's some contacts in here and some Bluetooth devices.
Look. I mean, I'm really happy that Paraben's been kind enough to add that community tooling to it. So that's a pretty good thing. I will say, and then this is a critique that I do with every vendor, every report. There's so much white space on the screen. Maybe we could kind of consolidate a little bit of that and those records and those fields and make a little bit better use of the space. And that's a big pet peeve of mine with reporting. Um, don't give me, let's say, 15 items in 2 pages. You can give me those 15 items in a quarter of a page, of a single page. So a better use of that white space would be nice. So again, a constructive criticism there, but again, applies across the board to all vendor reports.
I have to agree with the reporting. I am a big fan of being able to choose the different iLeap and ALeap artifacts, though. I really like that feature.
No, and maybe it's something that moving forward I need to also try to integrate into the tooling in the tooling itself. But I do appreciate Paraben and some other vendors embracing open source community tool work. Um,
Yeah, it's
uh,
really cool that they added it in.
yeah, it gives another way of easily getting the tooling to run on on a particular system. So a big issue that I say big, but an issue that my tooling has is that it doesn't ingest physical extractions like .bin files. And for those that don't know, it's like, well, you have pretty much everything from that phone in a physical dump. Okay, and that's not common anymore. On modern iOS devices, Android devices, you get a full file system because we discussed this already in the past, right? Because file-based encryption, so you can only get that. You don't get a full file system dump. So if you get one, my tooling will not ingest it. Now Paraben now says Paraben does support those type of binary dumps, and it can ingest it and then make it understandable to the leap that you need and do that for you. So that's a good thing that it does. Autopsy does the same thing, kind of leveraging the fact that they know how to read bin files or straight up full physical dumps to then pass it over to the tooling for analysis. So that's a good benefit there if you have an Android full. I keep saying full file system. If you have an Android physical, see, full file system is so common that my mouth just says full file system. Troy is asking, does it provide? Let me show you here. Does it provide search ability of all artifacts? Have we tried that?
I am not sure if it has the search in the ALeap and the iLeap.
I mean,
Um, There's an advanced search. I'm going to try it out for you right now. I'm going to guess that this is a yes right here. Let me try it.
Well, and while you're trying it, let me tell the folks so they know what happens behind the scenes. What my tooling does is it creates also um, uh, tab separated value reports. And what third party tooling does is it runs the tool and then takes those TSVs and then either put them in their interface or do some stuff with it. So it's pretty much a lot about a bunch of text files that are presented through the interface that come from the leaps based on that. And the leaps also provide the tooling, let's say Paraben or Autopsy or whoever, a list of the locations, right, of the artifacts that should be made available to the scripting for processing. So that's how it kind of works behind the scenes. Um, the tooling asks the leap, what do you want? The tooling tells them, the leaps tell the tooling what they want. They get it. It's run by the leaps. And then these TSV files, these tab separated value text files, are then incorporated in through the mother tooling, if I can use a term to describe it, right? The third party tool for presentation to the users. So that's pretty much how it works behind the scenes. Hopefully that makes sense.
So I'm getting 0 hits for defer, and I know that's in the Hickman image. However, I also have talked a lot about user error tonight. So I'm wondering if I'm just not choosing the correct options to do the search, because there is a search option here. So I'm assuming I'm just not choosing the right drop downs.
Look,
I don't have a lot of experience with Paraben, so
and even if you did it right, the fact you're doing it as a demo, the demo gods will always get mad at you for trying.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
so they will screw you up even if you're doing it right. So don't worry about it.
I'm going to
Um,
assume that there is a search, because I mean it says advanced search here, but it didn't get any hits on that.
well,
Yeah.
I will say that some good folks uh, like Johan and James, they're actually visualizing a future for the leaps where some of that capability will be included. So, and it requires me to upgrade my knowledge in regards to programming languages and some other things. And hopefully, for next year, I'll be able to gonna jump in and add those capabilities. Which talking about capabilities, I mean, before we jump in, we're good with the paraben stuff, right?
Yes.
All right, good. So let me show you now some of the stuff that is lately being added to the leaps, right? Before we run out of time. So Johan, again, I think he's in the chat today. He makes some rewrote some of the scripts that we have in the tooling. One of them is the calendar function, and it makes it so pretty. You have actually some little colors there, and it tells you the calendar names, information about those calendars, from what account they come from, a lot of detail that it didn't look as nice beforehand. He also added a little quick feature that I like to the reporting, for reporting specifically the logging files from the Leap tooling. So let me show you that. Originally, the tooling when it runs, the artifact looks like this. What you see there is it says, files with the files that were found and for what parser. And before it didn't even have the name of the artifact where it came from. Now they do. And he added additional things. Let me show you now the additional things he added. That's the old version. The new stuff now, I like it a lot. Let me see which one is it. Is the I think I did not put the picture in. Let me get it real quick. So I'll explain it verbally because we're running out of time. So what he added now is when you look at the list of files that were processed by the tooling, it tells you what artifact initiated that process, that searching of files, what's the regular expression that found those files, and it tells you the files and how many of them. Well, for the Twitter artifact, it was looking for this expression, regular expression, and it found 20 files, and here's the files. And you might say, who cares, right? Well, I'll tell you, developers and myself, we do care because we want to make sure that we understand if the tooling is actually hitting the files that we need. If it's hitting too much, we need to make sure that we tighten our search. If it's too many, we need to open it up, right? If you're looking to backtrack where data came from, that log will help you backtrack with that verification, right? So those little things that Johan is adding is a lot of value especially when you need to do deep dives. When you're doing deep dives, you want to have as much information about that artifact as you can to be able to do your verification, do it faster, do it smoother. So I appreciate Johan's work on this. Also, James is doing a lot of work behind the scenes that I hope to release at some point in the future that will benefit everybody that's using the tool. So good stuff.
Yeah, he does awesome work.
All right.
So we have a question. I'm going to
Yeah.
put it up there. Got a full file system of an iOS 30 plus days after the deleted images were deleted. Any hope of the deleted images being in photos.sqlite?
Well, I mean, the photos are not in the SQLite database,
Yeah.
right?
No, they're not. Yeah, they're not going to be in the database.
Yeah. So I guess the question is the information about those pictures? Because for those that are not familiar, Photos.SQLite, it's a database, and there's more than one, by the way, in iOS devices that keeps a lot of metadata information about images within the device. And there's one for the pictures that are on the device. There's one, well, we're running out of time. So there's there's a few of them, right? Um, that's a tough one because my understanding, and have to correct me if I'm wrong, when that picture is gone, when the cleanup happens, it takes that data out
Yeah.
too. Maybe it lives in the WAV file, maybe if you're lucky, or maybe some nodes, but that's a hard find.
If you're looking for the picture itself, I'm going to say probably not. Maybe going for the cloud data. Could it have been backed up to the cloud?
And I think
Possibly.
there's a photo of SQLite for all different. I think there's one for even cloud. I need to look up my notes. So
Yeah.
there's a few of them, but I guess the point is this, right? If you're dealing with a SQLite database, right? What's gonna rule is how the database is set up, right? What are the progmas for it, right? And
Yeah.
when it does the cleaning. And for
Right.
a lot of these, that data is constantly being updated. So it's kind of, especially after 30 days. But again,
Yeah.
we're kind of making some informed assumptions here. But after 30 days, that's pretty tough. Actually, 30 days is pretty much the limit in anything, usually in iOS devices. You can say, well, chats, for example. Well, maybe the chat got deleted, but maybe the chats are on the SecB files or in the knowledge C database if you have an older iOS device. But after 30 days, for sure, it's not going to be there. Like guarantee it's not
Right.
going to be there. So that's a tough one. Anything that's 30 days over in iOS devices, as a rule of thumb, it's not going to be there. Yeah, you agree with that, Heather?
Yeah. Yeah. You're probably not going to get the actual images.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to kind of before getting into the meme of the week to close the show, I want to talk about it's about November, and I know we're in the month of November, but I'm trying to make it the month of no and O in caps, Vember. So and you're like, why are you so negative? The whole no. So I did a post today about it, about the whole November thing, and I'm gonna show folks here that haven't seen it how it looks. So it's an article that I read about how no is important. And lately, I've been feeling a little bit of burnout. I'm not burned out, but kind of like getting there, I guess. And because I want to help out, I want to do things. I like to be busy and do things that are productive. Um, but the fact of the matter is that we can't say yes to everything, and we need to take some time to start telling folks no and saying no just not because of saying no. I mean, my opinion on that is you got to prioritize. You can't say no to everything because not everything is equally important. And I think saying no to things really honors the things that you actually say yes to. Of course, if you have plenty of time to take on multiple responsibilities, then sure, you want to do it, sure. But if time is short, which usually it is, you have to take some time to say no. And that will open also some time for you to be able to take care of yourself, right? And take care of your family. And then be effective at the things you actually say yes to, because there's nothing worse than saying yes to everything and then doing a half behind job Adam, right? So I rather not doing than do a half good job, right? So November, I'm trying to start saying no, and Heather, now she asking me all sorts of questions, just seeing if I'm gonna say yes or no.
He's
Expecting me
saying
to say
no
no.
to me, though. He's supposed to say no to everybody but me. I don't know how this happened.
Look, I'm gonna take
It's
that
not
as
right.
progress. It's progress. I believe it's progress. Now, so I want to leave everybody with that thought process. Is there's nothing wrong with saying no, just be aware of what you're doing. Be judicious. Be present. And some things are better left to do later, or for other ones, or another person to do, so they have an opportunity to get that, an opportunity to shine and do things. So good stuff. Right now, the meme of the week to close it out. And
See if I
do
can
you have
share
it?
my screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like, this is my favorite part of the show. So the meme of the week is showing a person walking and steps on a rake, and the rake, the stick, the handle hits him in the face, and it says newbie examiners when they don't validate. And then the next image shows this person like doing a really complex trick on top of the same on top of the same rake, and at the end steps on it and hits him or herself on the face. And it says senior examiners where they don't validate, right? And either way, either you're new or old, if you don't take the time to do things right, you hit yourself with that case on the face. And it's kind of funny because I did this meme, right? I put it out and I step on the rake and hit my face. And I say that because when I put it out, I was correctly and immediately educated. And let me see if I can find it here. I don't have it here, but in LinkedIn, I was probably told that, hey, look, you validate processes, but you verify the data. And maybe what you actually meant, based on ISO standards and all that, is verification. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely correct. So I'm making the point of making sure I use verify properly and then use validate properly when it needs to be used in the right context. So, I mean, for most people, validation and verification, it's a difference with no distinction, I guess, with no difference. But it is. So yeah, you gotta make sure you validate. I mean, I guess this show has been all about validation. And so don't drop the ball. Don't step on the rake.
Yeah, definitely the theme of tonight. Validate, validate, validate. Verify, verify, verify.
Yep. All right. So let me stop the sharing on the screen. Yep. Kevin Pagano tells us, yep. Kick flip my face plant happens to the best of us. It sure does. Oh, look at that. There we go. All right. So yeah. So anything else for the good of the order, Heather, that we're missing, or I'm missing?
That's it. That's all we got.
Well, again, thank you everybody for being here with us. Some new faces that showed up in the chat, some old faces from in real life that were kind enough to show up to the show. I appreciate your comments. We
Yeah,
appreciate your
thank you.
questions. Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on LinkedIn, obviously on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe to it so you can get alerts from when we're going live. We go live every other week, so no show next Thursday. We have to, and also it's also Thanksgiving, right?
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not
So
doing it on Thanksgiving. It's November.
exactly, no show during this time. It's yes to turkey. So thank you everybody, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.
Bye.